Chapter 4, Lesson 6. So this is day 1. We're doing the quadratic formula and the discriminant. So today we'll talk about the quadratic formula. Tomorrow we'll talk about the discriminant and what we can learn from that. So all quadratic equations can be solved with the quadratic formula. So unlike before, graphing, not all of them can be solved. We have the no real solution problems. Factoring, not all problems can be factored. Um, and now we have this quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula works for every single one. It'll give us all the answers that we need, all real, all imaginary values. So you can see the quadratic formula here. X equals, and again, we're looking at the x-intercepts, right? So with the graphs, we had x-intercepts. With the factors, we had the zeros. And now, here with the quadratic formula, we're going to have the roots. So x equals opposite of b. Remember, thinking about that b being opposite. Opposite of b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You will need to memorize this. Okay? So remember it. Memorize it. Write it down so that you have it, so you can use it, so that you can remember it. There's a song you can sing. If you want to look it up, you can look it up on YouTube. I'm sure it's there. Quadratic formula song. And you can just sing along and you can memorize it. So in order to use the quadratic formula correctly, your equation must be equal to y or equal to 0. So those would be the same things. Okay? So you can see here with my formula here, it's in standard form here, ax squared plus bx plus c, it's set equal to 0, or it could be set equal to y. Again, those have to be just like the same form we used before. Okay? So this will allow us to find that ABC for our coefficients here. All right, so let's jump in here and let's use the quadratic formula here to solve this problem. So first thing we need to do, again, make sure it's set equal to 0 or equal to y. It is set equal to y here. Now we can identify A, B, and C, okay? Now, I'm not going to make you do this every time, but again, it may be beneficial for some. So A, again, is with the x squared, it's our 2. B is with the x, 9. Always take the signs that's in front of it. And our C is our constant, our negative 18. So, quadratic formula. Opposite of B, plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. So plugging in our numbers. Opposite of b. So now I have negative 9 plus minus square root b squared. 9 squared minus 4 times a. 2 times c. Negative 18 all over 2 times a. 2. So now simplify it in parts, okay? Again, if you type this whole thing in your calculator, you're probably going to get the wrong answer, okay? And in our calculator, we don't have a plus minus button, okay? So we have to do this in parts. So we're going to simplify a couple parts at one time. I would simplify this part under the square root. You can type all of that in just like you see it in your calculator. So 9 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 18, that gives me 225. So negative 9 plus minus square root 225. 2 times 2 in the bottom gives me a 4. So now I can take that square root. So take the square root of 225. So again, sometimes these come out evenly. Sometimes they don't come out so nice. These ones kind of come out pretty nice. So square root of 225 is 15. So now I have negative 9 plus minus 15 all over 4. Now how do I go from here? So remember, quadratics, exponent 2, two solutions, right? So I have 2 real. I can have 1 real solution, or it can have 0 real solutions, which means that there's 2 imaginary. Okay, and we'll get to those eventually. But right now we're dealing with the real solutions. So 2 real or 1 real. So in this case, we're going to have 2 because this gets split once I get to 3 sets of numbers. So number plus minus a number all over another number. I can now split this up. So now I have negative 9 plus 15 divided by 4 and negative 9 minus 15 divided by 4. And I can simplify each part. So negative 9 plus 15, that gives me 6 over 4, and 6 over 4 simplifies to 3 over 2. I can simplify the bottom now. Negative 9 minus 15, it's negative 24 divided by 4, and that gives me a negative 6. So here are my 2 solutions. X equals, again, don't write them as a parenthesis. I got 3 over 2 and negative 6. All right, let's try another one together here. So biggest thing in this one, again, make sure it's set equal to 0 or set equal to y. This is not. I have a 4 here, so I need to get rid of it. So we're going to subtract 4 on both sides. So now that leaves me with 5x squared minus 8x minus 4. Now, I know we don't all like to write out a, b, c, so sometimes you can just go a, b, and c, and just make sure you're taking that sign with it, okay? So opposite of b is 8 plus minus square root b squared. Now, a couple things. If my b is negative, I either need to put it in parentheses with the square, or I can just put the positive in there, okay? Because negative 8 times negative 8 gives me 64, right? Or 8 times 8 is 64. It's really important, and you got to really be careful here with this negative, or you're going to get, again, get the wrong answer, okay? This negative 8 squared does not equal negative 8 squared, okay? So this is negative 8 times negative 8, which is going to give me a positive number, and this is negative 8 times 8. So it's going to give me a negative 64. So here it gives me a positive, here it gives me a negative. They're not equal. So if you don't type it in with the parentheses around the negative 8, it's going to give you the wrong answer. Okay, so really be careful. Either always type this. This can either always go in as a positive number, or you have to make sure you put your parentheses in there. Okay? All right, so negative 8 squared minus 4 times a, which is 5, times c, negative 4, all over 2 times a, which is 5. So again, let's simplify our parts. So we have 8 plus and minus. Again, what's in that square root? This negative 8 squared minus 4 times 5 times negative 4 gives me 144. 2 times 5 is 10. Now 144, slide this over here. So 144, if you know your perfect squares, that comes out nice and neat again. We have 8 plus and minus square root of 144 is 12, all over 10. And so now, nice neat numbers, 3 sets of numbers here, 1 on the bottom, 2 on the top. So now I can take and I can split this up into my 2 solutions. So I have 8 plus 12 over 10, 8 minus 12 over 10. So 8 plus 12 is 20. Divided by 10 gives me 2. 8 minus 12 gives me negative 4. still dividing by 10, and that simplifies down into negative 2/5. So x negative 2/5. Again, it doesn't really matter which one comes first, and 2. My two solutions. All right, let's take a look at one more type of problem here. So now you can see x squared is kind of by itself. Now, typically I would say move the x squared because there's only one thing to move, but let's keep it positive. If you keep it positive, it makes it a little bit easier to use, okay? So let's move the 34x and the minus 289 over. So we're going to subtract 34x and we're going to add 289. So minus 34x plus 289. And so we are left with x squared minus 34x plus 289, and that equals 0. So again, plug it into my quadratic formula then, opposite of b, so positive 34 plus minus square root b squared. So again, I can just put the positive, or I have to put it in parentheses, minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a, 2 times 1. So big numbers here. Plugging this in, we get 34 then, plus minus square root. We get 0 in that, and 2 times 1 is 2. Now, square root of 0 is just 0. So in this problem, we can say 34 square root of 0 is 0. Now, if I add 0 to 34, I get 34. If I subtract 0 from 34, I get 34. So really, this really only is going to turn into 34 divided by 2, which is then 17. So you can see this is that one that has the vertex right on that x-axis. So anytime our, what we call this is called the discriminant. Okay, and we'll talk about it later here. This is called the discriminant. When that discriminant is 0, it's only going to give us one answer because the square root of 0 is 0. So this second part we don't really need. And I just end up with a number divided by a second number. So in this case we get 17, so x, we only have one solution in this one. Again, that would be that double root problem. Okay, so 17 is our solution there. All right, you can see your homework down at the bottom right for 6 worksheet A. And tomorrow we'll take a look at that discriminant, a little bit more information on what we can gather from looking at that and that value.